I think because I was the youngest kid in my family for a long time, I would always be tagging along with whatever people were already doing. This included watching movies or shows and video games. But when I was about 10 years old, I began to explore media on my own. I remember a video that had a large impact on me was James Rolfe's Cinemassacre 200, which was his 200th film. He talks about starting his filmmaking journey from when he was a kid. He would get his friends to be actors and showcase all the problems he had writing scripts, directing, and especially editing. At one point he had 2 VHS players and would record one player with the other while fast forwarding and rewinding footage to simulate montages and special effects. He loved something so much that he kept on making movies, even if the movies were flawed. He kept going no matter what. I actually remember feeling the void after finishing that video because I realized that I don't have anything I love that much in my life. And right around this time, my older sister and cousins started to watch more and more anime, and they even shared some websites with me. At this time, there were no Crunchyroll or Amazons, so I had to browse these terribly formatted websites with no search bars or anything. On the front page, there were usually new shows or random shows. So I decided to look at some and found one with a description saying that it was about an amateur filmmaker trying to make it big and meeting people along the way. So I thought to myself, this might fill in that void. Unfortunately, it was a show called Ichigo 100%. And if you don't know what that show is, it's basically a trashy harem anime that happens to be about filmmaking, but there is no real story. And back then, once I started a show, I could not stop it. No matter what was in the show, I would feel the need to finish the show. So I watched all 12 episodes of Ichigo 100%. And at the end, nothing really happens. He never chooses to date anyone and never actually finishes his film. It sort of just ends. After I was done, I did something you should never do. I looked at the comments section. In the comments, someone typed, "If you want to see the real ending, you have to read the manga and starting from chapter so-and-so." And remember when I said I had to finish the series no matter what. So I looked up the manga and I started at the recommended chapter. Now the name Ichigo 100% is actually a reference to the first girl that the main character sees. So in my head I thought to myself, oh, so in the end he's just going to end up with the first girl. Let's just get this over with. In this particular manga reading website, you can just press the next page button and it will go to the next chapter. So it's really hard to tell sometimes if you're close to the end or not. And I actually got to the last chapter without knowing it. And the last scene is him walking outside to talk to this short-haired blonde character, I think. She is not the first girl he sees. He says, "Let's go out," and she says yes, and then the story ends. And in my mind I interpreted the line to mean, let's get out of this particular location and go somewhere else. But then I noticed that the next chapter arrow was grayed out. What's going on here? Do I have to find the rest of the series somewhere else? And then I did something you should never do. I read the comments on the manga website. Everyone typed, "The best girl won. The taste of tears is delicious." And then it hit me. I went back to the last few pages and realized what happened. There is a great shame in reading a trashy harem anime and its original source material. But there is a greater shame in getting your expectations subverted by said trashy source material. I actually questioned my intelligence after finishing the series, and I quit reading manga for years. The next manga I read was Attack on Titan. Actually, I can think of one more time where I watched something by myself at an early age. So again, I have an older sister, and I would actually entrust my life to her. I remember one time she was watching the show called Fruits Basket, and when I walked up to watch the show with her, she paused the show and she told me not to watch it because it's not appropriate for my age. So I never watched the show, even to this day. They actually remade the show a couple of years ago, and I wondered if I should watch the original and the new one because it's considered a classic show. But there was this other instance where she did not give me straightforward restrictions. She was watching this very trashy show. I don't think it's considered hentai, but it was still pretty bad. And she was watching it with my older cousin in the living room with speakers with my aunt right there. So when I walked up to go watch whatever she was watching, she tried to hide it by scrolling away fast, but there was one problem. The main character's design and costume are really distinct, and I used the same anime website that my sister used because she's the one that told me about it. So one day I was browsing the front page and saw the same show she was watching. And if my sister watches it, it's probably pretty high quality show, and she didn't say not to watch it, so I watched the entire 26 episode series of To Love Ru, which was infinitely more inappropriate than Fruits Basket and Ichigo 100%. I was actually in denial that my sister was watching the show because she watches shows like Death Note, and this show was not in the same caliber as Death Note. I realize now that she was probably watching it with my cousin to laugh at it, but back then it affected me so much that I took a long break from watching anime and watched live action films for a few years instead. Anyways, thanks for listening to me ramble, and have a nice rest of your day.